We've been taking some time at the beginning of this time to just have a little bit of time to just breathe. And last week we didn't do that. And I heard from a few of you kindly and gently, but it was hey, what happened to that moment? Because that's a moment that I really have started to look forward to during the week. So we are going to do that this morning. We're going to do it a little bit different. But before we start that, I actually want to invite you to do something else that might be even more uncomfortable for some of you. And you're going to run through about 10 to 15 excuses before you might get to the point where you say that, yes, I will do this. But I'm going to invite you this morning to turn your cell phones off. Not on silent, not on vibrate, off. And if you have a smartwatch like I do, I'm going to invite you to either turn it off or take it off. And there is a reason for it. It's not because I think I'm about to say something that I don't want you to catch or I don't want you to tweet or something like that. This is all being recorded, so it's all being broadcast out there anyway. I know that for some of us, we're like, but I use my Bible app on my phone. What do they need to get a hold of me back in MC Kids? And to that, I would say, believe me, if they need to get a hold of you, they will still get you. They're not just going to give up because your phone is off. As far as the Bible app goes, there are some Bibles in the pews, and I'm going to read it to you anyway, and it's going to be on the screen. For whatever other reasons you might come up with, I just ask you this morning to trust me for just a little bit. You don't have to do it. I can't force you to do it. I'm not going to give you a hard time if you don't do it. Some of you might actually need to ask somebody to show you how to turn your cell phone off because it's that difficult for you to take that leap and to turn it off. But now, I want to invite you to just spend some time with Jesus. If you want to close your eyes, close your eyes. I'm going to read a few scriptures to you over the course of the next couple of minutes. But other than that, I'm going to do my absolute best, and this is going to be difficult for me. I'm going to do my absolute best to be quiet up here and to not keep giving you prompts because I want you to take this moment for you and Jesus. If you nod off during this time, I will not be offended in the least. It might be that maybe that's what you need this morning. So, come to me, all you who are weary and carry heavy burdens, and I will give you rest. Take my yoke upon you and let me teach you, because I am humble and gentle at heart, and you will find rest for your souls. For my yoke is easy to bear, and the burden I give you is light. The Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want. He makes me to lie down in green pastures, and he restores my soul. lastly, wrestle with this question. Do you believe those words to be true? If the person next to you has fallen asleep, let them stay asleep, because that may be exactly what they need this morning. You know, we recently, as in a year and a half ago, went through this year that we just refer to now as 2020, and everybody knows exactly what you mean, and I don't want to be one of those people that talks about it all the time, but I think it's going to be one of those points in our lives that we're going to look back on quite a bit. And we're going to look back on what happened in that year, and most of the time it seems like we're just going to look back and we're going to complain. But during the time of 2020, we had the conversation a lot in a lot of different places that we've realized during this time where we have to stay at home, during this time where all the stuff that we had, the school, the sports, the activities, going to work, all those things, like they just came to a halt. And so many people had the conversation during that time of, I've realized that my life is too full of stuff that I don't need. I'm hoping that when I come out of all this and when we begin to open things back up and things get back to normal, that I'll remember the lessons that I've learned from 2020, that I need to slow down. And I need to not pack my plate so full of things that I can't take the time to appreciate the life that I've been given, that I don't take the time anymore to have a relationship with God, because for many believers, at least, during that time, they found time to pray that they hadn't found in a long time. They found time to dig into their scriptures that they hadn't had in a long time. They found time to actually have conversations with their families that they hadn't had in a long time, and we insisted that when it was over, we weren't going to go back to how it used to be. But I wonder if we forgot all of those things that we said during 2020, for many of us. And we took about 3 minutes and we just slowed down there. And for some in here, I'm assuming, because I'm one of you, it felt like an eternity. I counted to 30 for each one so that I would make sure that I could actually get us to the 30-second mark before I read us another verse of Scripture. Because I am the type of person who wants to go. I'm the type of person that when I took Sarah to Hawaii as a surprise trip for our 10th anniversary, started saving up the day we got married, saving up all our cash back bonus from our credit cards, took her to Hawaii, and I packed it so full of stuff to do that when we got back, Sarah's like, that was an awesome trip. I don't feel the least bit relaxed. Now, she said it much kinder than that, because if you know my wife, she's a very loving and kind person. She kind of balances me out sometimes. But that's essentially what she told me, is you had us going so much. I just wanted to sit on a beach. And like for me, I sat on the beach for 5 minutes. I'm like, I'm so bored. Like, let's snorkel, let's swim around this bend and see what's over there. That's a dangerous thing to do in Hawaii, because sometimes there's random nude beaches. I'll tell you that story at a different time. But for many of us, again, going back to 2020, like we went through 2020, we're like, okay, we need to slow down. We recognize that we need to slow down. It is so nice to be able to breathe. And instead, life has started to look something like this. Maybe some of you will see yourself in this. You wake up, you put some coffee on, you make sure the kids are up, You get breakfast going. You try getting the kids up again. You get yourself ready for the day. You tell the kids they have 5 minutes to get up. You let the dogs out. You drag the kids out of bed, pull a shirt over their head, and drag them to the kitchen. You throw away the burned breakfast that you forgot about, and you tell the kids again to grab their backpacks and turn off the TV. You explain again why homework should have been done the night before as you grab some Pop-Tarts while pushing the kids out the door. You get loaded in your vehicle and you run back inside to grab the keys that you forgot about on your way out. You drive to school while the kids tell you all the things they forgot that you'll need to bring them back later. Oh, and you talk them through their homework that they didn't do the night before. Now you head to work. You clock in and you get to it. You use your bathroom break to check your social media, and then you get back to work. You start on your 4th cup of coffee, and then you use your lunch break to run the items to the kids at school that they forgot that they told you about on the ride to the car or ride to school, or that they texted you about earlier that morning. You get back to work. You use your bathroom break to finish up your email. You get back to work. You leave early to pick kids up who forgot that they were riding the bus. You take kids home. You finish up some work from home while trying to get the kids to do their homework. Then you throw some dinner in the Instapot. You run back to school to pick the kid up from practice, who had practice that day, and you get dinner on the table and try to get the family to sit down. You rush through dinner so showers can begin. You clean up from dinner. You tell the kids 30-minute showers are way too long. You make sure everyone brushes their teeth by going back and brushing their teeth for them. You argue with kids about bedtime. Again, you put the kids to bed. You pull the computer out to finish up the work project that you were never able to actually get to that entire day. You take your own shower while brushing your teeth in the shower because that saves time. You set the alarm. You crash in bed, hoping you can turn the mind off about what needs to happen tomorrow. You sleep until the kid wakes you up in the middle of the night. Then you go back to sleep. You wake up the next morning, and you repeat the entire process all over again. Does anybody see just a little bit of themselves in that day? There's a few of you who see yourselves in that day, and you're like, that's a little bit extreme. I don't think anybody can handle that. But I think that there's a lot of us who would have to admit that we have a lot of those pieces in our lives on a typical day that goes over and over and over again. Or maybe you're sitting there and you're like, I'm retired. I don't have to worry about the kids anymore. Your day is full of looking at the news feeds all over and just making sure that you bring it in constantly and never turn it off. Or your day is full of running around and doing different errands. Your day still doesn't have the slow down, take it easy, push pause moment of your day. According to the Journal of Happiness, which I really don't read, but it was the first thing that came up on Google, it takes about an average of 8 to 14 days for us to be able to go on a vacation and actually feel like we're on vacation. Because at the 8-day mark, we have finally been able to let go of all of the things that are constantly running through our heads at home. And I understand, because I'm living this part of life right now, that if you have kids and they go on vacation with you, there really is no point in it that you actually start to relax. But it changes at least a little bit. 8 days to finally shut things down so that we can begin to actually pause our lives. My life was ruined about 4 or 5 months ago when my brother, my oldest brother, who came out here and spoke, gave me a book. It was one of those moments where he actually gave me 2 books, but he gives me 2 books, and I'm sitting there and I'm going, I don't have time to read 2 more books. Like, do you know how many books I have in my office that I haven't read as it is? And I'm looking at these 2 books, and one of them is titled Live No Lies, and the other one is titled The Ruthless Elimination of Hurry. And as I'm looking at those books, I'm looking at them and I'm going, I don't hurry that much. I'm fine. I don't stress. I don't live that kind of a life. I don't live a life full of worry. I don't need to read that book. Eventually, I got around to reading Live No Lies, and both of these books are by the same author. So I got around to reading Live No Lies, and that book was so good that I decided maybe I should go ahead and pick up the other book. At which point, I say my life was ruined. Because what I began to see is that my life is so full of things that I don't take the time to stop and to actually spend the time that I need to spend with my Savior. to actually spend the time that I need to spend resting, to take seriously that thing that I have taught about so many times in my life, but I personally don't live out. Because like I said, I'm one of those people who when I go on vacation, I want to be doing stuff. I don't want to sit around and relax and, spend the whole day at the beach or spend the whole day on the balcony of the hotel doing absolutely nothing. I want to go and I want to see things. When I have a day off, I don't want to sit around not getting anything accomplished on my day off. I want to look back at the end of my day and be like, man, I got some stuff done today. And as I read through this book, I started to realize that's not how my body was made to operate. My body was actually made, and when I say my body, I'm talking everything, physical, mental, spiritual. It was made to rest. It was made to pause. Again, I've taught about it so many times that, in the creation story, there are 6 days where God is at work and God is creating. And then on that 7th day, he rests. And I've talked about how it is ingrained into the very beginning of creation that we are supposed to have moments of rest. We look at the 10 Commandments and we read through those and we have our arguments about whether or not they should be posted here, whether or not they should be posted there, and we look through them. And as believers, many of us read through them, and we can make our arguments as to how seriously we take the love the Lord your God with all your heart, soul, mind, and strength. We can make our arguments as to whether or not we put him first and whether or not we have idols. But I would say that most of us would have to, not all of us, most of us would have to admit that we kind of ignore that one about the Sabbath. Because that isn't realistic in 2022. That might have worked back in the BC ages before they had all these things going on that we have going on today, but that doesn't work in 2022. There's no such thing as having time to rest in 2022. Especially when you look at all of the things that our kids have going on in their lives. There is just no possible way, and that's why we go on vacation and it takes us 8 days to finally be able to feel like we're resting just a little bit. And my question for you this morning is, as we fall into that trap and into that lie, I ask you, is it working for you? Is living that life that we supposedly have to live in 2022, is it working for you? That life that says that you have to work every possible moment that there is to work, that you have to be productive with every single moment of your day, with every single moment of your week. It has to be that you are contributing in a work-type environment to the world around you or to your children, that you have to do that with every second and you don't have time to rest. Is that working? Because I can tell you that for me, it doesn't work. I've told you before, I'm not a worrier. I'm not a stressor. I'm the type of person I can have a lot on my plate and be okay with that. But there comes a point where it is too much on my plate. The ironic thing is that this morning, as I knew that we were getting ready to talk about this morning, this was one of those mornings where everything went wrong, it felt like, in this building. Every technological piece that we have felt like it went wrong this morning, and it was run here and run here and run here and run here. And at one point, I was coming out of the booth in the back, and Courtney was just waiting there, and she's like, I wasn't going to come in because I know that you've been running around like crazy this morning, but I do have a question. It was obvious that people could see it. It was just one of those mornings. Jesus had days like that. In fact, Jesus had a lot of days like that. There's an instance, if you open up, which I know you can't open this up on your phones right now, but If you want to later open up in a Bible or grab the one in front of you, in Mark chapter 1, there's this instance where Jesus is just non-stop moving all day, and it's actually on the Sabbath that he's moving, which means that that's a whole other discussion that we will get to. Trust me, this won't be the last time this year that we talk about this. Because if you're anything like me, we're going to need to be reminded about this a lot throughout the course of the year. But there's this chapter that we read of this day in the life of Jesus where he starts in the synagogue and interacting with people in the synagogue, and then he goes to Peter's house, and while he's at Peter's house, he finds out that Peter's mother-in-law is sick, so he heals her. He shares a meal with his disciples, and then all of a sudden, all these people are just around him everywhere. And he's healing them, and he's casting evil spirits out of them, and it's non-stop all day long. One of those days that you get to the end of it and you're like, I don't feel like I sat down at all today. Kind of like I feel on a lot of Sundays. At the end of Sunday, I am wiped. And that's okay. But Jesus did something that we read about in Mark chapter 1, where it says in verse 35 that before daybreak the next morning, Jesus got up and went to an isolated place to pray. Translation, Jesus got out of bed early, turned off his cell phone, shut down the computer, went somewhere where nobody else was around him, and prayed. Just got by himself. Him and his Father and nobody else. Jesus, a man who was incredibly busy, who had stuff on his plate all the time, got away to pray. And it wasn't like this was a one-time occurrence. In Luke chapter 5 and verse 16, I love a verse that we read in there about the life of Jesus where it says, "But Jesus often withdrew to the wilderness to pray." Jesus often shut everything out and got. Now, when it says wilderness, it doesn't mean that he went off into the woods. He might have sometimes gone off into the trees. He might have sometimes gone off into the middle of a field. He might have sometimes just gone to a corner, because in this situation, the word wilderness translates into isolation. He often withdrew to an isolated place to pray. Jesus made a habit out of getting by himself. Jesus often pushed pause on the things that were going on. Pause in our life is absolutely necessary. I hear it, and I understand it. I've got 3 kids at home. I know the obligations that are on parents. I know the obligations that are on others. The things that we feel like we're expected to do, and we sit there and we're like, you don't understand. There's not time to pause. I can't stop and pause. And what I'm hoping I can make you uncomfortable enough with to wrestle with this morning is to understand that you can't afford not to. It was literally built into your being to rest. We see anxiety skyrocketing. We see burnout skyrocketing. We see panic attacks skyrocketing. And I know that there are a lot of different reasons for them. But one of them that you hear people talk about is, I don't have any time for myself. If I just had another hour in my day. If you had another hour in your day, you know what you would do with it? You'd fill it full of more stuff. If we can't have the discipline now, the practice now, to hit pause, we're not going to have the discipline to do it because we have another hour in our day. And we will eventually burn out. We hear the phrase, burning the candle on both ends, and we know what happens when you have a candle burning on both ends. It's why we say it. Eventually, it runs out, and there's nothing left. I kind of think, looking at his life, reading about it over and over and over again, Jesus was a pretty big deal. Jesus was pretty needed. I know that there are people who don't agree with that, and there might be some in this room, but I believe that Jesus was a very, very necessary person in the world in which he lived. Otherwise, he would not have been surrounded by people all the time. But you know what he did? We already read it. He often withdrew from everyone. And I need you to hear these words this morning. We are not better than Jesus. We are not stronger than Jesus. We do not have more energy than Jesus. We cannot go longer than Jesus without the need to stop and to pause. This has been coming up so much in my life lately. I told you about the book, but I also recently went down to Florida, which was incredible, and I got a moment to pause while I was down there. But our theme for the YP60 retreat, which is 60 youth pastors coming together, they still let me come because I still get to be on that team for one more year. But the theme this year, if you can guess it, was pause. And I got to speak on the first night of it because of some of the things that I've been wrestling with. There's a phrase that you may or may not have heard, but in the ministry world, we're hearing it more and more, called the Great Resignation. And what it means is we see pastors, especially youth pastors, but pastors in general, resigning at incredible rates over the past 2 years. And so this theme idea came up because we believe as a team that one of the big reasons for that is the burnout from feeling like there is so much on the plate of a pastor. Trying to figure out how to navigate the church world coming out of the pandemic and coming out of all the shutdowns. And the demands, there's always been demands on pastors. We know that. There's demands on anybody in any job. But pastors are feeling this in a way that they haven't felt before. And what I proposed to the group anyway was, I wonder how much of that comes down to the fact that pastors have forgotten what it means to pause. That pastors, like myself, have forgotten that we are not better than Jesus. We are not stronger than him. We are not more important than him. So I want to end by giving you something to work with off of this. I don't know if this is going to work for you, but I'm going to give you what I've started to do. And you can take it or you can leave it. That's completely up to you. First, can you throw the picture of Central Park up there, Tom? I don't know if anyone's ever been here, but this is Central Park in New York City. It's a city that I have no desires to ever visit. I know that sounds completely un-American to say something like that, but just no thank you. I know a lot of people want to, but in the middle of New York City is Central Park. And there have been debates over the years as to whether or not to take this beautiful park. Now, granted, this analogy will fall short because I understand that Central Park is full of crime. Maybe actually it doesn't fall short, because even in your Central Park moments, there's going to be an enemy trying to get you to leave Central Park. But anyway, in the middle of New York City, there's been this debate over whether or not to take this beautiful park, and turn it into more office buildings. Turn it into more skyscrapers, because if they did that, you know what they could do? They could make more money, and they could be more productive. But part of the reason that Central Park has not gone away is because there are at least a few reasonable people left who understand that there has to be a place of refuge in the midst of all the craziness that goes on in our world. That sometimes we get to a point where we are actually not more productive by trying to do more. In fact, during the French Revolution, I've recently read about this, and it kind of blew my mind away. And during the French Revolution, they tried to take the work week to 10 days instead of 7 days. And you know what it did? It cratered the economy. It didn't work. Because there comes a point where you are no longer productive. You are no longer benefiting from putting in more hours. Now, we could get into all the studies as to where those hours land, but that's not for today. But they found out that, no, they didn't admit this part, but there's something to this 7-day cycle. It's almost like we were created that way, to have a 7-day cycle with the last one being rest. I don't know, maybe I'm crazy. Maybe I've been reading the Bible too much. I don't know what it is. But anyway, Central Park. So we have, as a staff, mandated, and I say we, I mean I've mandated as a staff, that we take Central Park days. That we take time, and I won't go into all the specifics on it, but we take time that this is your time to hit pause. You can call it a retreat, you can call it Central Park, you can call it whatever you want, but to take a half a day and to just hit pause and spend time with God. Turn your phone off, spend time with God. It's going to look different for different people. The things Deanna does are not the same interests that I have. I do not craft. Crafting to me would be absolutely miserable. I think that would push me closer to Satan than it would to God, because of the words that would be going through my head. But you take the time, and once a month we take these Central Park days. On top of that, before I came in here this morning, and before everything went crazy this morning, I believe that one of the only reasons that I was able to approach it like I do now versus how I would have a year ago is I've started to do what I've always referred to as the old man thing to do, and I get up early. I was up at 5:30 this morning. I was out walking at 6 o'clock this morning because it was nice and it was incredible. That may sound miserable to you, but I knew that when I walk into this building, there's no telling what's going to happen with the rest of my morning. I know that eventually we're going to start our time together, and eventually I'm going to get up and, well, I should say I know. I kind of mostly know that those things are going to happen. There's always the possibility that they don't. But I take that time before everything else happens because that's the time that I know that I can spend time with him. On a normal work week, I've actually started continuing the old man thing, and I get up at 5:30 during the work week too, because that's when I know my kids aren't going to bother me. I'm not going to see a child as I'm trying to read the Bible at 5:30 in the morning, and I'm going to be able to get through it. Sometimes I go back to sleep when I'm done, but at least I know that I spent that time with him. When I get into the office, the first thing I do is I stop and I pause. And because my commute is so short home, I have now started doing my commute in my office before I go home, where I start to tell the staff, like, hey, my day is over. I'm commuting at this point. I haven't actually used these words yet, but this is what I've told them I'm going to start doing. At this point, I'm commuting, and so I cannot answer your questions or your texts because I'm driving, and that's illegal to text while I drive. And then when I leave, I go home, and I've been able to spend that time. And I get it. Some of you are saying that this isn't going to work. It's worked. I thought it was so unrealistic. I've got 3 kids. I've got a full-time job. I've got a ministry that I love to do. And it's one of those that it's not a 9 to 5 type of a job. Like, it's a 24/7 kind of a job. And I've realized that it's okay to turn my phone off sometimes. Not because I don't love you, and not because I don't want to hear from you, but because I won't make it if I don't. And I'm here to tell you that you won't make it either if you don't. I don't think I was even getting close to burnout. But I could see it coming around the corner someday if I didn't put some practices into place that I got from Jesus. started doing some of those things that he set the example for us to do. So I'd encourage you to find your Central Park, to find it weekly. We're gonna get into, like I said, at some point, we're gonna jump in and we're gonna really talk about what it is to Sabbath, to Shabbat. We're not gonna do that today. And I'm not even going into all the distinctions as far as the rest that God tells us to take and the one that he set the example for. Like, it wasn't turning on video games or binging Netflix shows or distracting ourselves with social media. No, it was turn it all down, shut it all off, and I am with you. It doesn't mean, it's not the same as laziness. It's not the same as just sitting down in silence for 30 minutes. It can look like a lot of different things, but there's a lot of different things that it doesn't look like. And someday we'll take some time and we'll start to dig into all of that. But for now, I think it would be awesome and it would be good for you if you would take the time to just say, Jesus, you made sure to get away. And I know I'm not better than you are. So help me to get away. Even if it means I've got to get up a little bit earlier, or I've got to go to bed a little bit later, or I have to tell my kid no about something, or I have to tell myself no about something. I'll be honest with you, this is driving Sarah crazy because my desire to watch TV has it's gone. Because I relish those times where there's nothing. And as I read this book, The Ruthless Elimination of Hurry, which the author actually stole the phrase from Dallas Willard, as I read this book, I read it at first going, this guy's nuts. He sounds like what he is, another Portland person. Then I started to realize he might be onto something. In fact, I think he might be right. That we can't keep living our lives the way that we are. It's been such a short time, and we've already forgotten so many of the lessons that we said we learned from 2020. And now the only thing we talk about with 2020 was how dumb everything was. And we get into arguments about it, and it's just one more thing to stress us out. Instead of looking back and going, oh yeah, I remember when I realized I don't need my life to look like that. And I do need to slow down, just like Jesus did. If we want to call ourselves his apprentices, his followers, his disciples, we do what he did. And this is one of those things that he did that we start to find pretty quickly actually makes our lives easier. Because his burden is light. And he looks at all of us who carry heavy burdens, and he says, I want to carry those with you or for you. I want to give you rest. I want to lay you beside still waters so that your soul can rest. We spent 3 to 4 minutes at the beginning of this in silence. And for me and some of you, it felt like an eternity. For some of you who turned your phone off, this has felt like an eternity. Some of you didn't turn it off because you thought, there's just no way I can do it. And I didn't even get into all the studies about cell phones this morning. I'm going to stop. And I'm going to allow you to have some time to rest. As we sing this last song, if you want to stand up and sing, stand up and sing. If you want to sit and sing, sit and sing. If you want to sit and just pause, then just pause. And if when it gets over, you're like, I'm not ready to be done with this yet, then you can sit right where you are. No one's going to kick you out of this building. Eventually, MC Kids might come looking for you if they're still watching your kid. But other than that, no one's going to kick you out of this building. Don't miss this moment, and don't miss the moments this week where God is calling you to slow down, to rest, and to pause. God, we thank you that you didn't teach us and show us and set the example to do all these things that we hear so often that we're supposed to do, that we're just supposed to go until we just have nothing left. But instead, you set an example for us of, no, there are regular moments in our lives that we need to have time to get away. God, it says that you often withdrew to the wilderness to pray. That you did it often enough that the people around you actually noticed that you did it. God, I've gotten to the point where I can fall into the trap of I want to make sure that people notice how busy I am. What if they notice how rested I am? Not how lazy I am, how rested I am because of you. I pray that prayer over all of us this morning. Amen.